So there's a famous question the Mefarshim asked regarding Hanukkah. I guess there are many famous questions, but the one we'll focus on tonight is a very fundamental question about Hanukkah: is why is it not mentioned in the Mishnah? So to be totally honest, it really is mentioned in the Mishnah. The real question is, why is it get such an insignificant mention? In other words, it's mentioned in passing, nothing to do with Hanukkah. It's a Mishnah of if you have like flax on top of a camel and it goes out and it's Hanukkah and it lights fire, who's responsible? Because there's a Gemara in Baba Kama. Everyone knows Erev Shabbos how crazy it is on Bath 13th, wherever you live. So the Gemara talks about if you're running a Dvar Mitzvah, even if you cause a hezek, perhaps you're put. It's a whole sugya in Baba Kama, but the concept being is why? You should know that person's in a rush. You have to be more careful. So everyone knows Hanukkah, they're Pesach Beso, you should be more careful. So the Gemara, it's a Hilchas Nezikin Shaila. It's nothing to do with Hanukkah, it's just parenthetical. And also the Gemara in Megillah, the Mishnah in Megillah goes, it's one of the days where you chayev in Kriyas HaTorah. So very insignificant mention. In fact, some people just think wrongfully that Chanuka happened after the Mishnah. So therefore, of course, if it happened after Rabbi wrote the Mishnah, so therefore they're not bothered by it. But really, it's not true. Really, there was plenty of time. Chanuka happened before Rabbi codified the Mishnah. So why is it so little? And not only that, the Gemara itself, there's a couple of plot on Chanuka. Megillah Purim gets its own Masechta. So why is it that Chanuka seems to be discriminated against? So we'll have different approaches. We'll have a couple of what I call global approaches, meaning it's not specifically going to explain Hanukkah. We're going to focus on general why certain things are left out and we'll tie in Hanukkah. And then we'll get more specific to Hanukkah related. So we'll start off with some global answers. One is from a Ruvain Margolis, who is a big Talmud Chacham. He's actually a librarian. He writes as follows. He says, you notice there are certain other mitzvahs you're not going to find in the Mishnayos. Besides, he's not even necessarily talking about, Chanukah per se. He says, talis, tefillin, Mashiach. Mashiach is mentioned like parenthetically. We say it in the Leil Pesach. But you have a machlokas, is there a mitzvah every night to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim? So one opinion, the other says, one says, why is it the extra word Elohavi Lamosa Mashiach? It says, there's an extra word now. No, it tells me the mitzvah applies in most of Mashiach. But again, it's parenthetical. So why is Mashiach, Talis, and Tefillin not mentioned? So he writes because they were basically nationalistic mitzvahs, and they're living in a time where people are concerned. They're living under a foreign government, and they're concerned about the Jews rebelling, revolting, starting their own nation. So he says, so Chanukah was the classic one, Rabbi Miyatin. So he's going to be more historical, saying the Rebbe was afraid that if he write about Chanukah in the Mishnah, it might cause great harm to people, the government, so what's going on here, let's put down. So therefore it was more of a general, not specific to Chanukah, but any nationalist that missed things that the nations could take, so they had to be very careful. That we don't live in a time like now where it's like religious freedom. You ask the king the wrong way, he'll chop your head off. So any type of they're very paranoid, these people who, when you're a one-man show, you're a tyrant, and you would think you're very confident, but you never know, you're worried about the guy, which guy's the traitor, which guy's out to get you, so you're more worried, about that. So therefore that's what he writes. It's a more global, it's not limited to Chanukah, but Chanukah was obviously the ultimate Rabbi rebelling against the Greeks. So concern for the safety of the Jews and not to cause harm, and that's why he left it. That's one global approach. Another global approach is the Rambam in Peirush HaMishayos writes this, not about Chanukah, he writes it about, we'll see, and then we'll apply it. So he writes, the Rambam mentions in Peirush HaMishayos, he says, how come Talis and Tefillin are not mentioned in the Mishnayos? So he writes, there is the Rambam in Peirush HaMishayos, he says, Hadvarim Yiduim. What's the need to? Everyone knows, you put it on every day. Everyone knows about Talis. I don't have to tell you in the Mishnah about something which is common knowledge. It's interesting, that's the language he writes, the Rambam by Megillah. He writes, Hadvarim Yiduim. I don't have to tell you about Megillah, the story of Purim like I do Chanukah. It's well known, it's common knowledge, well known.
I'm sorry.
Chanukah. Did you learn this sugya well? Shalom Bayis. You have to get home. Yeah. Okay, I'll send regards. Thanks. So the Rambam writes it specifically by Talis and Tefillin. So some say, okay, so Chanukah happened from a historical point of view pretty right before the time of the Mishnayos. So everyone knew about the Chanukah story. So any, dvarim you doing. So of course, on this question you can ask, well, there are many other mitzvahs. Perhaps we could say, So all I know is we're going on what the Rambam himself writes in Perush Mishnayos. So already we have each of the answers are going to be difficult in their own way. So why specifically these? But the bottom line is that the Rambam writes it, so you have the Rambam to rely on, and he extends it to Chanukah. Those are more like global, general approaches. The third approach is much more Chanukah. There's a famous Chasim Sofer. The Chasim Sofer writes that we all know the Ramban, it's a pasuk in Parashas Vayechi, and the Ramban goes into great detail of Lo Yasser Sheva Mi Yehuda, that you can't lose the kingship from Yehuda, that basically the king has to come from Sheva Yehuda. And we know the Chashmonam, not only weren't they from Sheva Yehuda, but they were Kohanim, which is a special lav. So the Ramban writes, even though they were Chasidei Olam, and without them, Torah would have been forgotten. Nevertheless, because they took over them as such a terrible sin, they were going to be destroyed. So the way the Chasim Sofer writes, there's one way which doesn't, which is difficult to say, that he writes that, well, because Rabbi was a descendant from Sheva Yehuda, so it was a personal thing, and therefore he left them out. That doesn't sound right anyway. What's more likely is not that he left them out because of that, because they sinned, and the Chashmonam sinned. He didn't want to publicize the Aveira of these great Chasidim, Kohanim, so he didn't mention the mission in order to avoid embarrassment to the Chashmonam. That's how they write, the Minhagim write in the name of the Chasim Sofer, that because they did a terrible sin, not to publicize it. That's A3, the Chasim Sofer, it's limited specifically to Chanukah. The problem with that is, this only fits in well according to the Ramban. There's a famous machlokas we mentioned last week, 2 weeks ago, one of them. There's a famous machlokas, the Rambam and the Ramban, on did the Chashmonam do right or not. Because the Rav Salvation says it learns it's a machlokas. Why? Because the Ramban is clear. Terrible thing, family destroyed. But the Rambam, when he begins Hilchas, in his Mishnah Torah, Hilchas Chanukah, he talks about it. He makes such a big deal about the Malchus of the Chashmonam. In fact, Rav Hutner writes, where did the Rambam get it from? Because when the Gemara writes about it, it calls it Kishagavru Malchus Beis Chashmonai. They could have said Kishagavru Chashmonam. But from the fact the Gemara emphasizes Malchus, the Rambam told a tremendous thing of Jewish-run government. There was a tremendous Yeshua for those whole 200 years that they ran. So the Rambam clearly learned it's a good thing. The Ramban, so Bishlam, according to the Ramban, you can get the Chasim Sofer's answer. According to the Rambam, it's the opposite. You should have it in the Mishnah because what a great thing they did. As I mentioned, what's in the Kudas HaMachlokas, the Rambam and the Ramban? So there's another Machlokas, the Gemara in the second parak in Sanhedrin, about whether there's a chiyuv to appoint a king or not. Machlokas in the Gemara, one opinion chiyuv, one opinion rishus. So the Gemara says, so the Rambam paskins, the three things you have to do when you enter Eretz Yisrael. You have to appoint, I think he says in this order, but obviously any order works. You appoint the king, destroy Zera Amalek, and then build the Beis HaMikdash. So clearly the Rambam learns it's a chiyuv, and the Ramban learns it's a rishus. So perhaps that's the machlokas. Everyone agrees you should get someone from Malchus based you, not the Kohanim. But the question is, what happens if you have no choice? If the only people who are right to be kings are someone else, should you make them a king? So according to the Rambam, you have to. There's a chiyuv to appoint a king, so b'makam she'ein king, yishtadel liyos king. That's the Rambam. But the Ramban, L'shitasan, there's no chiyuv to appoint a king, so don't appoint anyone. So that could be. And some point out as well that try to modify the machlokas Ramban, and maybe everyone agrees. Maybe they're talking about two different things. Because maybe everyone agrees in the beginning they had to do it. But even though but the Rambam's Masha the whole time was good. Maybe the Ramban also agreed. Everyone agrees maybe that there was no one else that had to do it. But the fact they stayed on after for the next 200 years, that was the problem we had. While the Rambam seems to say no. So that's a whole discussion in terms. But the Chazim, but what's clear is the Chazim Sofer's answer only works with the Ramban. He left it out of the Mishnah because it's a busha to the Chashmonah. So therefore we need an answer according to the Rambam. There's a famous piece from Rav Soloveitchik, A4 we'll call it. So Rav Soloveitchik wants to say as follows. He says there's a Gemara in Moed Katan. We know in the third parak of Moed Katan it talks about Avelis, and one of the mitzvahs is Kriya. That, even though Kriya will chud Avelis will chud, but Kriya is, associated with Avelis. So we know that when a person loses a loved one, they rip Kriya for mother and father over the left side, anyone else the right side. So, and really strictly speaking, you rip Kriya b'shas meso. In other words, it's nothing to do with being a karev. If you go visit someone and they die right in front of you, you have a chiyuv. The minhag is we don't do it. Let's say even a son, or because why? The person's not thinking straight. He's not in the right frame of mind. Wait to the funeral. The rabbis, you can tell our minhag is to wait, but really the chiyuv is shas chimam. That's really, in fact, that could be this could answer a famous kasha the Mefarshim ask is, we know Tisha B'av as a din of Shiva, so how come we don't have to rip Kriya on Tisha B'av? So perhaps one of the reasons is because Tisha B'av is Avelis Yeshana. We're doing Avelis Chadasha. It's the chimam which caused you the Kriya. Tisha B'av is Avelis without, because it's over something that happened a long time ago and there's no Kriya. So either way, there's a mitzvah of Kriya. And we wait to the funeral. So comes along the Gemara in Moed Katan, the famous Gemara. What happens if a Sefer Torah is burning? Let's say someone burns, a guy comes and, whoever, or we'll see who, someone burns the Sefer Torah. So the Gemara says, if you're a roa Sefer Torah burning, so the Gemara says you have to rip Kriya twice. You have to do a double Kriya. Double Kriya, why double Kriya? Once for the kfaf, and once for the osios. Once for the parchment, and one for the letters. Okay, that's the Gemara. Fine. So it comes along with salvation. It says, wait a second, there seems to be a stira. There's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, the famous Gemara, with Hananya ben Trajon, who is being tortured and killed, and they took a Sefer Torah, they put wool, just to torture him more, and they burned the Sefer, so they burned the Sefer Torah, and they said to him, what do you see, Rabbi? I thought he was taking my coat for a second. So he said, what do you see? He said, I see the Sefer Torah burning, but the osios going to Shamayim. So Rav Soloveitchik asked, what's going on here? I don't know, when you burn a Sefer Torah, what happens? Is it just the cloth burning? Or is it the cloth? In the Gemara in Moed Katan, it says you rip Kriya twice. They're both burning. And the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says that you see both. So how do we reconcile the two? So a beautiful pshat from Rav Soloveitchik, he says, it all depends on who's burning the Sefer Torah. That we know, and as well, that when the Chazal use different languages to describe, let's say, the Romans and the Greeks, by Romans it's usually Churban Abayis. By the Greeks, Timul Kol Hashmanim, it's Tuma. What's Pshat Churban, what's Pshat Tuma? So churban is much more physical. Like you destroy physically, you mow down, you take a caterpillar and you knock down the walls. And tumah is no, you keep the base of the up, but you matame it. So he says as follows. He says the Gemara in Mo'i Katan is a Rahmana Litzlan is talking about a Yid burning a Sefer Torah. A Jew could cause more harm than any guy. A guy who has no shaykhis to Torah, like the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, is the Roman soldier. All a guy can do is burn the Sefer Torah. He has no kesha to the Osios. You can't burn. But a Yid who has a kesha to Torah, we know every Jew, before he's born, the Malach teaches him Kol Torah Kulo. We know the self-hating Jew can cause more harm than any guy. In fact, that's what the Romans are churban and the Greeks are tuma. And in fact, it's a famous kasha of the Baal HaMor. The Baal HaMor asks, we have a principle in Shas, Ein Adam Oser Davar She'eino Shalo. We're talking about Avodah Zarah. Let's say someone walks into your home and starts bowing down to the dining room table and makes it about it. Does it become usher? No. He can't. It's my table. He can't have any power. Let me just point out. You're telling me if someone puts treif on my dishes, so my dishes are kosher? No, of course not. Because if it's a physical thing, it becomes treif. Avodah Zarah is a machshava. So that's why if I have a machshava your table, it's meaningless. But obviously, if I physically put treif on your dishes, they do become treif. So either way, to the Baal HaMor, it's a very simple kasha. He says, what do you mean timo kol hashmanim? Ein adam osir davar she'eino shalo. The Beis HaMikdash belongs to the Jews, not to the Greeks. They can't be metame the Beis HaMikdash. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. That's the kasha of the Ramban, and the Ramban answers, he's an echinami, it's a special gzeres hakasuv when it comes to Avodah Zarah that it can. Normally you're right, but Avodah Zarah is different. The Baal HaMor says, no, that's not the pshat. The Baal HaMor says, the problem was, the Yevanim couldn't do it. But it was the Misyavdim, it was the Hellenists, it was the assimilated Jews that went into Matami. The Greeks can do all they want, they can't come close to it, can't touch the Osios, only the cloth. But the intermarried, the assimilated Jews, they're able to Matami. And he said, in fact, that's the terrible tragedy of Chanuka. It's the Jews that will Matami the temple. The guys can do Chorban, they can't do Tuma, and it was the Hellenistic Jews, and that's a tremendous shame on the Jewish people. In fact, we all know it's nice to make the Greeks into enemy, which they were, and they got their punishment. But many times it has to be a turning inward. Many times we control our own. I'm not turning the victim into but many times, like for instance, in fact, we find it by Pesach. How do we begin the Seder, Leil Pesach? We begin the beginning is we have the dipping of the salt water. So there are many answers, but one of the famous answers, Karpas, it represents the dipping. We did the Mechiras Yosef, the brothers, you dip it in the Sonas Pasim, Karpas, they connected. So the question is, why are we beginning the Seder about Mechiras Yosef? Why is that relevant? So that's the Yisod. The whole Seder we're going to be talking about the Egyptians, and they're going to get there all. But don't forget, before we begin, Mechiras, we're not totally innocent either. We caused on a certain level, Mechiras Yosef. So that's the Yisod here. The Rav says a tremendous busha to Klal Yisrael. We were, and hence, that's why Rabbi left out. See, the Chasam Sofer said to avoid the busha that they sinned, and the Rav says no. According to the Rambam, it's avoid the busha of the Yidden. What a tremendous disgrace that we desecrated the temple. That's A4. So all the answers are all nice, independent answers. The two global answers we have of more historical, afraid of revolt, or Dvarim Yeduim, and also the Chasam Sofer about that it's an embarrassment to Chashmonam, or the Rav, the embarrassment to us. So all these answers are basically saying it's a good kasha. Really, Chanukah should be in the Mishnah, but we give like external reasons why they're not. And the good reasons, they're all, you can pick and choose which answers you like more than others, but they're all good answers, but they're all assuming it's a good question. Like, really, Hanukkah should be in the Mishnah, but the reason why it's not is because of these reasons. So perhaps we could suggest A5. I want to say a more fundamental reason, that it's not, Rabbi specifically left it out of the Mishnah on purpose. It wasn't like it wasn't a punishment, it wasn't an onesh. Why would Rabbi leave out Chanuka? So perhaps we could suggest the following. There's a famous Gemara in Yuma, I think Daf Chav Ches. The pasuk in Tehillim Lamnatseach ala Yeles HaShachar. The pasuk talks about Esther. That the Gemara makes a drasha there that this like morning is the end of night. So too Esther, so too Purim was Sof Kol Hanisim. That's the Gemara. That Purim was the end of all miracles. So the Gemara says, Va'ika Chanuka. What are you talking about? What about Chanuka? So again, the different ways of learning the Gemara. The way we'll learn the Gemara is, the Gemara is saying no, Purim is the end of all Torah Shebitzav miracles. There's 24 books of Tanakh. Chanuka is the beginning of Torah Shebal Peh miracles. What exactly does that mean? What's the Torah Shebitzav miracle? And what's the Torah Shebal Peh miracle? So what's Pshat? So we know the Vilna Gaon writes and others, and they explain that they point out, let's say, in the different Hasidic Svarim, and that they compare Rachel and Leah to like the Beis HaMikdash, the first Beis HaMikdash, the second. So what's the difference in Rachel and Leah? So from Yaakov's perspective anyway, basically Yaakov was tricked. He's supposed to marry Rachel. He worked 7 years, and he had to work another 7 years. So really he worked 14 years for Rachel, and he got Leah as a gift. Leah he didn't do anything for. So Leah represents Torah Shabbat. Torah Shabbat is God gave us the revelation. We stood at Har Sinai, we accepted, and that was it. But Rachel represents Torah Shebal Peh. We know the Machamta Shotor, you walk into a library silent, you walk into a Beis HaMedrash, everyone's screaming at one another, you're working over the Pshat. In fact, that's why in the Hasidic Svarim, that's why they say like Nashim Apater from Talmud Torah. Obviously there are halachic reasons, but they say because it's the Machamta Shotor, a woman Apater from Mochama, and therefore the Pater from Torah. But the point being is, the whole concept of Torah Shebal Peh is the Amelis. It's the dynamic of Torah Shebal Peh. That's why specifically Rabbi was very reluctant to put it into print, because once you put something into print, it loses its elasticity. In fact, that's why as Yisrael Salanter said, today the Gemara has the status of Torah. It doesn't mean like in terms of the Kedusha, but now it's a closed book. So now we can't argue in the Gemara. We have to say, we can have a machloket, what does the Gemara mean? So basically, Kolzman Rebbe was alive, and before he put it down, it was a wide open book. That's the dynamics of Torah Shebal Peh. And therefore, and that's what the first Beis HaMikdash came with all the Nevuah, had everything. The second Beis HaMikdash was lacking, didn't have many things. Because the first one was the open Giloi, but the second one had to come from us. There were no more Nevi'im. We had to figure out what God, we had to go through Torah. In fact, interesting, besides, not only is it not mentioned in the Mishnah Chanukah, but it's barely mentioned in the Gemara. That's intentional. There's 2-3 param. He wanted it because it's a Torah he wanted to keep Chanukah al Peh because it represents the Torah Shebal Peh holiday. In fact, of all, there's a famous sugya in Shas of the power of the Chacham and Losas. In fact, it's the famous kasha is, let's say Chanukah. What bracha do we make every night? Asher Kiddush Shabbos Tzivanu. But the Gemara says, "V'heichen Tzivanu." The rabbis, how could they command? How could they command us? So the Gemara says, Losas. The Torah said that you went into the Chacham, so it's like God commanded me. But of all places, like what's it doing in the 2 blood in Chanukah? But that's the Yisod of Chanukah. It's the power of the Chacham and Mitzvahs D'Rabbanan. That's the whole Yisod of Chanukah, the Koach of Torah Shebal Peh, the Amelos Patorah. And in fact, that's what they point out. So that's why perhaps Rebbe left it out of the Mishnah. It's not coincidental, but gufa to show that is the essence of the Yontif of Chanukah of Torah Shabbat Peh. In fact, the Rama writes, as I mentioned, there's a machlokes, there's a famous lavush. How come on Chanukah we have no chi of Suda, and on Purim we do? Because Chanukah was spiritual, Purim was physical, even though the Rambam holds there is a Suda. So we paskin, no, there is no chi of Suda. But the Rama writes, however, when you have a Suda, you should have divrei Torah, shivos, and make it into a Sudas mitzvah. So probably more than any other Yontif, Chanukah is, whenever you go to work, it's a regular day. And even in yeshivas, it's almost like a regular day. The only thing you do is lighting candles. For Chanukah to become special, it may be Purim a little bit also, but even more, to make it has to come from you. It's like, okay, so every time I go to work, I like to get out for 10 seconds and I'm back to my regular day. Chanukah, what the yisod is, for Chanukah to become special, you got to do something. It's not the Torah Shabbat holiday where, okay, the Kedusha like Shabbos is by itself. Chanukah, we have to do the shiros with the shpacha. We dafka didn't have a chi of Suda, because we have to create it through our Torah Shabbat Peh, through Talmud Torah and shiros and shpachos. And that's why Chanukah is left out of the Smayas Gufa, to teach us the Yisod. That's what Chanukah is all about, the Yisod of Torah Shabbat Peh, and etc. So let's summarize. We have 5 answers why Chanukah is left out of the Mishnayos, or barely mentioned. We have Rav Reuven Magolas, because the global answer of he's afraid of the revolt from the Goyim, and then we have, based on the Rambam and Perush HaMishnayos, who writes Talis and Tefillin are left out because Dvarim Yeduim, so perhaps you can extend it to Chanukah as well, which is very recent. Then we have A3, the Chasam Sofer, who says it was an embarrassment to the Chashmonaim. For Sheva Yehuda, so not to embarrass the Chashmonaim, he left it out, but that only works according to the Ramban. But the Rabbi says it's a good thing. So we have the famous answer of Selevan, a beautiful answer about reconciling the Gemara Moed Katan, which says you rip Kriya twice when the Sefer Torah is burning. Yet when it comes to the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, we only see the cloth burning and the Osias going to Shamayim. So how do we reconcile? When a Yid does something, a Yid who has Shaykhus to Torah, he can burn the cloth and the Osias. That's the whole Yisod. How could the Greeks be Matami the temple? The most of Davashen and Shalom. The answer is you're right. But it wasn't it was the Misyavdim. It was the Jews who they could do more harm, and we have to have it turning inward. That's like on Pesach, Mechiras Yosef, we begin with the dipping. And that's the Yisod. It was embarrassment to the Chashmonaim. Not to the Chashmonaim. It was embarrassment to the Jews that we let the Jews were Matame, so Rabbi's not going to Mefarsim that, and therefore he left it out. And the 5th answer, perhaps, is the whole Yisod of Chanukah. Chanukah is the Yontif, Purim's the end of Torah Shabbat Ksav, Chanukah is the Yontif of Torah Shabbat Peh, and the whole Yisod is Amelos and working on. That's why Rachel versus Leah, first base HaMikdash and second. The whole concept of Chanukah is, we had the Beis Hamikdash, and we don't have the Nevi'im. We have the Gemara about this whole source of the Chi of the Rabbanan comes from Chanukah, and that's what basically the difference is. Torah Shabbat Ksav, it's the revelation. We sit here and soak it in. But Torah Shabbat comes from us. We have to go out and do it. And that's the whole Yisod. That's why the Ramah concludes by saying, so we have to make it into a. So why did Chazal just say Sudas mitzvah? But Dafka no, because it's up for us to turn Chanukah. It's Torah Shabbat Peh, so it can't be this, Xeris HaKasav. It has to come from us to extra learning, lighting the Chanukah candles and thinking about all the Nisim. That's the whole Yisod of Chanukah, and that's the whole Yisod why Rabbi left it not to embarrass us. That's nothing to do with embarrassing. He left it out because it doesn't belong. Even Gemara is only 2 pages because if Chanukah became written down, it would lose the whole Yisod. The whole Yisod of Chanukah is flexibility and the dynamic and Torah Shabbat Peh, and hence Rabbi specifically left it out of the Mishnayos.